Welcome to episode 72 of the Geekly. My name is Jules.
I'm Lex, and today we're doing season 1 of October Faction on Netflix.
I'm hoping it's like the one and only season. It might be the entirety of October Faction on Netflix.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Remains to be seen.
We're also doing Legends of Tomorrow and Picard.
Yeah, anything you want to talk about? Anything's happened this week?
We saw the Batsuit. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty bloody cool.
And, once again, Zack Snyder's fans proved that they're a bunch of immature idiots. Because, the whole week, it was just a bunch of release the Snyder Cut people slamming the new suit because saying it looked like cheap cosplay and everything. I'm just it looks pretty damn awesome, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was through it was either red light in the room or a red lens filter or something. I thought the suit looked fantastic. What did you make of the bat emblem on his chest?
That looked pretty cool, and there's a lot of speculation that it's made out of pieces of the gun that actually killed his parents, which would be a really sort of dark and interesting twist there. And a few people have said that it looks like it can be removed and used as a weapon in itself. So, I mean, in general, I'm really excited to see this version of Batman because it looks really cool so far.
My excitement level was, a 10, and now it's still a 10 because it can't get higher than that. But I'm just desperate to see this film. 2021 is going to be, oh my god, I think there are 3 DCEU films, 4 MCU films, and a couple of other very geeky films in there as well. It's stacked.
Yeah, it is going to be a loaded year.
Yeah, I think two kind of Sony Spider-Verse films as well, so wow. One more thing, I haven't seen Sonic yet, I haven't had time, but it's apparently doing so well at the box office that a sequel is already kind of guaranteed, so I'm thrilled. Go out and see that film. I implore you, if you liked Sonic in your youth. My early 90s was Jim Carrey and Sonic the Hedgehog, so both my bases kind of covered in one go.
The thing I find interesting is that overall for its first weekend, it hasn't done leaps and bounds better than Birds of Prey, but the entire narrative about Sonic the Hedgehog is that it's an unquestioned success, whereas all of the media around Birds of Prey is that it's a flop, and it's just you can really see the misogyny in the media that, one, comparing the two films because they have completely different audiences. I mean, that's been going on for weeks of, don't watch Sonic, go see Birds of Prey. It's go see both of them, for fuck's sake. But yeah, it's been an interesting phenomenon. The reporting on Birds of Prey has been very, very biased and skewed, and with Sonic coming out with kind of similar numbers and being praised for them, it's just an interesting thing to observe.
Yeah, I think with DCU films kind of hitting $1 billion and Sonic being a brand new entity, I think there was a huge expectation on Birds of Prey to kind of be following in that footsteps. But the shame of it is, I think Sonic's going to go past it at the box office probably within 7 days at the moment, the way it's tracking. But
it has a larger audience, for one. I mean, you're not going to take your kids to see Birds of Prey.
Yeah, and it begs the question, did Birds of Prey need to be an R-rated film? I think most people have kind of come to the conclusion that it didn't really. There were a couple of F-bombs thrown in there. They could have toned the kind of violence and the fighting down a smidgen, and it would have been a PG-13 film. So
I was actually surprised that it was an R-rated film.
I was as well.
I went and seen it thinking it was, PG-13 or something, and didn't change my mind by the end of it, and then they started talking about the R rating, and I was like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That movie was R-rated?
I think it was just a little bit of language. That was about it.
Let's discuss October Faction.
I'm going to start by saying, Lex, if you'd come in today and you'd said to me, did you hear about this story in 1997? This real, visionary director, man or woman, not sure, created this TV show, and they thought to themselves, we're 3 years out from Y2K, and I'm worried that, civilization's going to crumble, we will go back to the Stone Age, essentially. So I need to put my opus, I need to put in a time capsule for 23 years, so in the future it'll come out and it'll be like the Dead Sea Scrolls, it'll be like the Ten Commandments, like a real tinfoil hat kind of individual. That is what the October Faction feels like to me. It feels something that's so incredibly dated, impossibly boring, with not a single unique idea throughout the entirety of it. That's what it feels like. It's it's been plucked out of something from the late 90s, and I can't think of any kind of redeeming factors that it has, truth be told.
No, I mean, I think The very first scene when Fred and Dee are in bed and Dee kind of sits up and drapes her arm around him and has this gun in her hand. And you can tell the actress isn't even sure why she has this gun in her hand for the shot. But it was meant to convey a certain level of badassery that these two individuals just do not possess.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of the first indication where I was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to go very well. Zero original ideas. It's got like every single trope from every single monster television show out there, and there are a lot out there. So if you're gonna do a television show about demon hunters or monster hunters, you need to like come with your A game and be ready to do something revolutionary. And this just
ain't that.
No, like it's in terms of production value and special effects and like overall monster aesthetic, Buffy is better, and that was like what 20-30 years ago.
That's a very good use. That's a very good example, I have to be honest. Did you at any point, and now I know that other than the word Netflix there is no overlap at all, but I several times watching this thought this is being released on the same platform as the Umbrella Academy, and that kind of blew my mind frequently. You talked about the fact they hit on all the tropes. I've actually written some down if you'll indulge me. I felt that it was like Men in Black meets The Incredibles in terms of the parents are up to something, the kids don't know about it, but instead of superheroes, it's like kind of like the alien, or these weren't aliens, they were kind of like monsters. That was kind of the gist of it. And then when the kids found out, it was this big revelation. The October aspect felt to me like the Blood Moon from Roanoke, where all these things happen this very particular time of the year, which I didn't like. So I didn't like in Roanoke either. The daughter draws the future, just like in Heroes. The son can see dead people, just like The Sixth Sense. When they found out that the mum was a warlock, that was like Daisy Johnson kind of finding out that her mum was inhuman.
Except without the surprise.
Yeah.
Because it was like broadcast from day one. I think pretty much all of the like twists, like Seth as well, as soon as he popped on, it was like, yeah, that's Seth.
Yeah.
I didn't know how they did it, but I knew it was Seth.
And the show played it like it was this big reveal. We got you. Seth is alive. Didn't see that coming,
like,
did you?
Episodes have been like, okay, when are they going to reveal that this is Seth?
Yeah, and the same with Sam as well. Absolutely just...
And they didn't make use of either of them.
Yeah.
Seth's character in particular, like, what did he do?
Yeah.
He was just this weird, creepy guy floating around with this, like, cyborg eye, and then he just disappeared at some point, and, like, I don't know what the fuck happened to him. He's just gone. I think he's dead. I think he got killed in the...
Were they both, like, held by the mum, who's now the head of Presidio? Both in these little pens, Sam and Seth, I thought.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Which she didn't seem too happy to see her long-lost son. I know it's not the son she remembers, but I thought that was a bit weird.
The thing that irritated me the most was that there was zero effort put into the lore, which is at least a good 60% of your show if you're doing a show about monsters. You have to have good lore and good backstory. We didn't even really get told what the various creatures were. I think at one point it was mentioned that somebody was a werewolf. They talked about vampires, but they didn't really say anything about their vampires. There were those weird things that had the 4 spikes coming out of their mouths. But like we got nothing about the history or any information about like who these monsters were and what they were doing and where they came from, like whatsoever, which just really, really annoyed me, because when I watch monster hunting shows, that's what I watch it for.
Damn straight. Moving back on some more tropes, because there are more that I need to talk about.
The only one they didn't have was the palm slice.
Very true, very true. The fact that they were suppressing their warlock side through medication reminded me of 2 things. The first I needed your help with, Nora, with the inhibitor chip inside her that Iris put in there. The second one was Vanya from the Umbrella Academy. We were led to believe she had no powers, but her father actually knew that she was the most powerful and was kind of feeding her these suppressing drugs. Presidio, talk to me about Presidio, because it was meant to be this huge worldwide organisation, you know, again, kind of similar to Men in Black, and yet it felt minute. It felt like this tiny little parish monster hunting society.
Well, we only saw about like 3 people in all of Presidio.
Yeah.
And when we did, and they were all related to the Allen family. Like when I think about similar organizations, like in Sanctuary, in Warehouse 13, the Librarians, it comes down to the world building. Presidio didn't really feel like it had a history, and we were constantly being told things about Presidio. Well, we weren't really being told things about Presidio. We were being told that Presidio was bad without any sort of reason behind it. And that happened frequently in this show, where in between scene changes, something would happen, but the scenes just kind of bounced from one to the other. Like at one point, the kids were both at school. They both had different altercations. I think Viv, it seemed like she got away with her altercation, and Jeff wasn't seen being caught. But then the very next scene, the parents are being called in, and the kids are being suspended. And it was like, what? How did we get from point A to point B? There was very little connective tissue between the individual scenes.
Let's talk about the family. Can we start with Fred?
I hated Fred.
I hated Fred as well.
I did, like, every time he was on the screen, I just wanted to punch him in the face.
As a kid, Fred was cartoonishly weak. Watches his brother get killed, and then he pisses himself, and he was almost on the floor curled up in a ball. Like a year later, he was John Rambo. Essentially, he'd gone from point A to point B in no time at all. In the present, all I thought was this man is too old for what he's being portrayed as being good at. I think this show was telling us that he was they never told us the ages, obviously, but I think they were suggesting that Fred was maybe mid-50s, maybe 60, but the whole time I thought late 70s, because he was just so old in everything he did, in everything he said, in every kind of opinion that he had. He seemed like the conservative father in something like American Pie, where his whole role would be curmudgeon. That's the role. I couldn't connect with him at all in any sort of sense. And he was meant to be this James Bond type, with all these guns and this beautiful wife and these kids, and he'd go out, monster hunting, and they moved all around the world, and just couldn't get past that at all with Fred.
One, the actor is not a very good actor.
Yeah.
That's kind of the most glaring thing. Granted, he wasn't given a whole lot to work with, but I mean, we've reviewed shows that had piss poor scripts before, and the actors have done their damnedest to make it into something, and this guy was just kind of phoning it in the whole time. He had zero chemistry with his family. I did not believe that they were his family whatsoever. The two kids, Jeff and Viv, I bought them as siblings. They had nice chemistry together. Even Dee, she kind of seemed somewhat connected to the kids. Maybe not mother of the year, but
the thing about Dee was I felt that she was kind of the most undeveloped person. All her backstory was hyper exposition conversations or flashbacks. This is what happened.
There was no
I'm
actual
so damaged by it.
Character development, plot progression, world building. It was all exposition. We were just told things. And Dee's character in particular fell into that trope of, the badass gun-obsessed woman. There's this weird compulsion to put hot women and guns together, except it wasn't entirely believable.
The thing about Fred was that it was like Ric Flair when he, in his heyday, one of the greatest wrestlers, but then when they brought him back 10 years ago, and they were making us believe that he could still fight these young guys, and so him and her together never really worked for me, and they kept trying to do this thing like a Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where they would have guns in their hands, they'd be fighting monsters, but bickering about domestic life at the same time. And that just, it was so flat. But they were trying to be playful with it, They didn't say it, but the suggestion was date night's cancelled. We've got to go after this vampire. And that was meant to kind of make them endearing, but it just was so ham-fisted, and it's the way it was done.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things wrong with this show. On top of which, I just rewatched all of Bones. And Dee is played by Tamara somebody, who is also one of the main characters on Bones. She plays Dr. Cam Soroyan. And so I went from watching her in this one role, where she was fairly good at it, to starring in this absolute train wreck of production, and trying to transfer from character to character, and it didn't work very well.
In the whole show, she was the only person I recognised. I don't think I'd seen anybody else in anything.
No.
I kept thinking two things. I kept thinking kind of Hallmark made-for-TV movie. But I also kept thinking, if this is on Netflix has money, You've got to maybe inject one big star into everything you do. Or at least B-level star into everything you do, just to give it some kind of gravitas. I feel like the casting of Fred could have made the show potentially. Just somebody kind of endearing. It was never going to be Nathan Fillion or something like that, but it could have changed the whole way we viewed this show. He was just this wooden curmudgeon stick in the mud that you were rooting against. When it was the choice between, do we go off with Warlock Mum or do we stay with these parents, I was go with Warlock Mum. Go with Warlock Mum. She's amazing. She's been portrayed to be this super badass individual, great powers, and there is nothing I like about these parents.
And I mean, that story in itself, can we just talk about, like...
Start with the seance.
Oh my god. Okay, so there's a wake, and, you know, like all teenagers everywhere, they decide, oh, hey, we're gonna have a seance. So you have, like, there's so many problems with the show, like, trying to, like, pick one thread to talk about without touching on all of the other ones, because there's the whole thing with the popular kids and the whole town dynamic as well. But anyway,
we've got time.
So they have this seance. This is like the first time that Viv's powers kind of manifest, and somehow through blood magic, she's connected to her mother, who is chained underwater for reasons we never find out. But Viv calling to her somehow releases her bonds and frees her from the water.
Gives her super strength to suddenly be able to get rid of these shackles and swim to the surface.
Yeah, which again is not explained whatsoever. Then every time we see her, she's got that weird Aquaman, like, flowing hair thing, like she's walking through water.
That is such a good way to put it. It's bang on.
And, I mean, at least in Aquaman, they were, like, underwater. There was reason for it. And so, yeah, she's basically going around killing a bunch of people, trying to find her kids, which we aren't really told, but, I mean, anybody who's familiar with storytelling in any way, shape, or form, like if you've read a nursery rhyme, like, you can see this twist coming a mile away.
Like, I'm not great with these twists. Sometimes, like, the very obvious ones will catch me out. I saw this one coming, so, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they couldn't have been more overt about it if they'd, like, literally written on screen, this is the twins' mom. So yeah, Viv gets branded a freak because she has, like, this convulsive attack and the popular kids all run away. And so we finally get to the confrontation between the adoptive parents and Warlock Mom. And it comes out that, like, the adoptive parents were complicit in this mass genocide of this kind of utopian warlock community. And then they stole these two kids. And they're sitting there like, but we love you. You're our kids. And, like, Warlock Mom is standing there saying, you killed their father. Yeah. Like, you literally shot him in the head. Naturally, the kids, of course, are like, what the fuck? Yeah. Like, this is messed up.
And again, the show, I think, tried to play it off as this Sophie's choice. Like, oh, God, do we go with our birth mother or our adoptive parents? Oh, it's so difficult. And the kids were like, yeah, we're gone. We're going off with Warlock Mom.
Yeah, I mean, like, as you would. If you, like, suddenly find out that the people who raised you, like, killed your entire community, they would give you pause. I enjoyed Warlock Mom a bit, but they were a bit inconsistent in her characterization. Like, she bounced from being, like, super sweet and normal to, like, being this vindictive Dark Phoenix type character. I think they could have done some interesting things with that, like had the kids kind of help her rediscover her humanity after being tortured and all these bad things happening to her, but they didn't do that.
Well, season 2, fingers crossed. I think I did enjoy the kids. Like, I could believe that they were siblings. I found it weird that the son basically in episode 1 was like, we move from school to school. It's what we do. We're going to become king and queen of this school like we do all the time. We'll rise to the top. It'll be great. And then from that moment on, they were shown to be the most antisocial, weird, difficult to get on with people you can possibly imagine. Like, the guy was... He had his moments, but he was a complete dick, like, most of the time. I thought the daughter of the family was by far the most likeable of all of them. I don't know if it was just, like, ego, or that other schools had just not had, like, queen bees and, like, kind of cool kids. But they seemed so ill-equipped to do what they set out to do. And they were constantly betrayed by these kids that they were trying to make friends with. The daughter was betrayed by the one friend she made. The son, Philip, like the cool kid, pretended to be friends. Then he was betrayed.
And they had that weird, like, romantic interlude, which was just not believable at all. And like, such a trope of queer representation from, like, the early 90s. We've moved beyond these stories where the popular guy is afraid to come out as gay and his parents keep him sheltered and stuff. I mean, like, there are plenty of narratives now with queer people taking lead roles and prominent positions, and it's probably like the way a straight person would view what being queer in high school is like. That's what I imagine, like, and that's probably not that far from the truth. I imagine there are like 0 queer people in the writer's room for this show.
That storyline was 0 to 60 in like 2 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, like, they're sitting there having a conversation, and then Philip kisses him, and all of a sudden they're like a couple, and Jeff is like, "Are you putting pause on us?" And it's like, you've literally been together like an hour.
Should we talk maybe about the ending, I guess? They were all in their house, their big, old, gothic-looking house, full of Presidio people. Jeff breaks away so he can hold Viv's hands. They commune with their birth mother, who frees their adopted mother, and the two of them kill Edith, who's the head of Presidio. And that's it. No resolution into where all the men of Presidio went that were in the house. Nobody seemed to miss Fred.
Yeah, I mean, even Dee wasn't that broken up by the fact that her husband was dead. Like, I think Jeff asks her where he was, and she just kind of goes, "Yeah, I'm really sorry about that." And, like, that's it. And it was just like, this is your husband.
Yeah. And everything went back to normal. And all the kids were fine, and the school was fine, and it was like a click of your fingers, and everything was righted. I mean, did you want to talk about how Fred, old man Fred, with his young wife, and still he was cheating on her, which seemed so fucking impossible to believe.
Well,
I mean, I know that, in real life, it doesn't matter, who you are, what you look like, but it just seemed like such an odd choice.
One, it didn't serve the plot in any way, shape, or form.
Not at all, no.
It was like a weird tangent they went on. 2, they didn't actually show it. They just sort of implied it. It was another one of those instances where things happened off screen and they made a weird jump. I mean, like, the totality of the affair was him showing up at this dead drop and being like, "Well, you can stay." And then, like, we jump to the next scene and they're kissing goodbye. I literally sat there for a second and was like, did they have sex? I don't know if they had sex. I think they're trying to tell me that these two people are having an affair, but I'm not really sure. And there's nothing in Dee and Fred's relationship to indicate that he was having an affair. It was an aspect that I pondered and was perplexed by for the rest of the series. Like, why did they include that in there? Like, what was the purpose of it?
There were a lot of parts to this that served no purpose other than shock value or just to kind of hit you over the head with something. I don't mean this to sound kind of flippant, but kind of like a tick box scheme that they were doing. What did you feel about the Me Too movement section that happened with Viv, where she'd been kind of, some guy tried on with her and she'd thrown him off, and then he wanted to prosecute her for like breaking his arm because he's like this NFL player or something, I can't remember. And then all the other women kind of spoke up as well. Do you have any kind of thoughts on that scene?
I think it was ticking a box. They were like, oh, let's have this, really profound scene. Because nothing was done about it. Nothing was made out of it. They're at this party. All of these girls come forward and are like, yeah, this guy sexually assaulted me. And then Philip and Jeff just kind of like chase him off, and that's the end of it. And everything goes back to normal. Jeff is remarkably calm, finding out that his twin sister was almost raped. Not incredibly like emotional about that or concerned. They don't tell anybody. It seems like public shaming is enough for what this guy's done. Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure they probably did have a list of things they wanted to include, like, let's deal with racism, and let's deal with, misogyny, and let's deal with sexual assault, and let's do this, except they never actually dealt with any of it. It's like they felt obligated to include real-world issues, but they didn't actually investigate them or interrogate them in any way. It was just like, oh yeah, racism. I
don't have anything positive to say about this TV show.
I think this is like the worst thing we've ever reviewed.
I think it might be the worst thing we've ever reviewed. I came to the conclusion it's certainly the worst thing I've seen this year, but it's only February.
Yeah, because usually, like, when we review things, and like even if we don't like them, we can find something redeeming about them, or say, this would suit, such and such a person. It's just not my thing. But like this is just bad. There's nothing redeemable about it. I'm amazed that it got made. Like, how many people read these scripts and no one once thought, hey, this is really shit. What are we doing?
It can't come back. I don't know how all this became a thing in the first place.
Yeah, do not watch the show.
Simple as that.
For any reason whatsoever.
Let's move on to Picard. Directed by Jonathan Frakes this week. When I was watching this episode, it made me think a lot about the next generation and how there were very different people. They were all, pacifists, essentially, but there were very different people on the bridge of the Enterprise back when Picard was captain. He was balanced out with other people. I know it's called Picard and it shouldn't be any kind of surprise to me, but this is such a Jean-Luc Picard show. It makes it a little bit one note still, even though they've breached, they're into space now. I'm enjoying it, but it's so slow. It's like a drive through the countryside. So what are your thoughts on it so far?
I think it's great that the focus is on Picard. I'm really enjoying seeing a different Picard than the one that we saw in Next Generation. We get glimpses of who he used to be and how much privilege he had, and usually through the lens that now he doesn't have that privilege and he's not adjusting well to not having that privilege that he used to have. In this episode we did the flashback to 14 years ago and the Romulan refugee camp on Vashti. Everybody knew him.
He looks like the man from Del Monte.
Yeah, the kids all ran up to him when he beamed in. He said hello to everybody. He was welcome. He was, they looked to him for reassurance and strength and everything. 14 years later, he comes back, and it's a segregated community. It's very sort of reminded me of outlaw towns and old westerns where the hero walks in and into the saloon and everybody just kind of looks at him and glares at him. And you could trace what happened to the Romulans directly back to his resignations and his failing those people. Generally in the sense of the whole Romulan community and specifically in the sense of the boy who he was supposed to find a home for and he never did. So there's a lot of resentment and anger built up towards him, and he's not welcome anymore. He's really struggling with that aspect of it, and it culminates in him kind of throwing a little bit of a tantrum that he has to be saved from, because he's not that Picard anymore. He's not the person who can walk in and make a declaration and have people bow down to him and say, yes, of course we're going to do what you say because you're a respected individual. He's just this kind of tired old man who's still trying to exert his authority, and it's not working. And I find that a really, really enjoyable dynamic to watch. This is not an adventure show. It's a very character-driven show. It's quite different from the other Star Trek shows in that it's not an ensemble piece either. So I think Picard is breaking new ground in terms of the Star Trek franchise. Even Discovery is very much an ensemble show. Michael is kind of the main protagonist figure, but we get bits and pieces of the other crew members as well. Whereas this show is, as you said, it's just about Picard. It's about him coping with his change in circumstance and coming to terms with mistakes he's made in the past. We keep running into people that he's dropped out of contact with for 14 years, which just makes me wonder, what the fuck happened to him in these past 14 years that he's not keeping up with anybody. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it for what it is.
We finally get a number. We may have had the number before and I forgot. 900 million people were going to be evacuated and relocated. And the fact that he was leading the charge, he was leading an armada of ships to try and do that, just feels like the most Picard thing ever. It feels like something like a United Nations kind of project. And that's, I guess, what he perceived Starfleet was. He thought, this is what we do. We're humanitarians. We go out and we help people. What did you make of L0T, the kid, and how he's grown up and he's joining the team now as a kid with a sword in a world where everybody has guns?
It's an interesting addition to the team. He's very slowly building together a crew of disparate personality types, and so I find the amalgamation of all of these different characters kind of very interesting, and I'm curious to see how they'll interact with each other in the future. Presumably at some point, because Picard had a very sort of fatherly relationship with L0T when he was a child, so presumably they're going to work through some issues along those lines as well, because it's fairly well known that Picard hates children, and yet he keeps sort of adopting certain individuals. He was like that with Wesley Crusher, and it was like that with L0T when he was a child. He even admits to both of them he doesn't like children, but he develops a fondness for these individuals for some reason. So I think it's going to be very difficult for him to not treat L0T like the little boy that he was and to acknowledge like the man that he's become, which should create some interesting scenes between the two of them.
I thought it was so funny when he said to Picard, I'm going to pledge my allegiance to you because you've met the criteria of what this particular group of mercenaries or whatever call themselves, and that is that you are a lost cause.
Yeah.
Like you have no hope, and so I will pledge my sword to you, which I thought was really fantastic. It would seem so far it's really good for Star Trek fans that they want more of the Picard story. It's enjoyable enough, but I don't have particular interest in it at this point. I did recognise 7 of 9 though, and I assume that's a big oh my god moment for Star Trek fans.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's been waiting to see Jerry Ryan pop back up, and like I heard that she was going to be in this episode, and I kind of figured that we wouldn't see her until the last few minutes, and that's exactly what they did. They're just like, oh, it's 7 of 9. She's one of like the best characters off of Voyager, which was kind of a crap show. I imagine 7 of 9 and Picard are going to have some interesting interactions as well, just based on her personality and his personality.
Cool, I look forward to it. Do you want to move over to Legends?
Sure.
The A story, Marie Antoinette and the perfume launch felt very Legends of Tomorrow. The B story, Constantine, Gary and Charlie, which was all right, but again, it felt like a classic Legends episode because John Constantine wasn't with the main bulk of the team. I'm annoyed by how useful Zari is. I want kind of new rubbish Zari to be dismissed, so we get old Zari back. It seems that she's going to have some kind of brain thing where she just switches to old Zari because she ate a donut and put on like a flannel shirt.
That seems to be the direction they're heading with that. Like she'll keep getting these flashbacks, and then all of a sudden she'll remember who she really is, and we get Zari back. Yeah,
and other than that, I just really liked Astra kind of inflicting 10 years of lung damage on John Constantine in about 10 seconds, and him kind of coughing up blood and collapsing. He's not going to die, but it's an interesting situation to show John Constantine in. I don't really have anything else to say about the episode. It was just kind of what you'd expect of a classic Legends episode because the team were allowed to kind of join together and flourish. Yeah, I'm probably more enjoying the non-Constantine stuff than the Constantine stuff, but it also makes me just want a Constantine show.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I wasn't super into like the Legends half of it. I think I'm more invested in what's going on with Constantine at the moment. They haven't done the character development on her brother, so he just seems disposable. So the combination of the two of them is just that they both need to go away.
I feel like if there was more on TV, we wouldn't be reviewing this.
Yeah,
but it's a lean period of the year until things like Devs and Westworld and other things come back in.
Yeah, so. I mean, when you've got things like October Faction on your list, then you know you're really scraping the barrel. I don't think Legends is really doing anything innovative and new.
Oh, so. Can I just say again, public service announcement, the last 3 episodes of Batwoman have been insanely good. Really good. Like
I've seen a lot of people like going crazy about it on Twitter, and like I'm trying not to look at it too much. Seriously. But people are like losing their minds.
Watch the 3 of them. It's like one story told over 3 episodes. Watch them back to back to back. I really disliked Batwoman to start off with, and full disclosure, I still unfortunately think that Ruby Rose is the weakest part of the show. But God, the woman who plays Alice, she is fucking nailing it right now. She is so talented. I can't believe I've not seen her in anything else. Wow. People go out and watch Batwoman. I think it's the episode is called What a Queer Day or something like that. The second one's called The Unbirthday Present, and the third one, I can't remember what the third one's called. Those 3 episodes are dynamite.
So I think that just about does it for us for this week. We'll be back next week.
Altered Carbon Season 1. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. And then the week after Season 2, which really looking forward to that as well. So, we'll see you next week.